Merry Christmas, everybody. We're up in Columbia, New Hampshire. We're at the home of Bob and Wendy Baker. I wish you could be here and see the views that they have to the north and to the south. They're absolutely extraordinary. And so with us today is Bob Baker, sitting over on this side of the room, and Larry Rappaport, who is here as one of the state representatives from this region. And both of these gentlemen have been involved from the beginning in the struggle against the Northern Pass. So we're here today to ask them some questions about things that are going on presently and what they think may happen in the future relative to the Northern Pass. So we'll start right away with Bob. And Bob, I'd like to ask you if you can give us a sort of a current status report on the blocking action that's going on up here in the North Country.
Well, I think that the blocking action announced by the Forest Society has held. The transactions that are contemplated by that are still pending, but the landowners, as far as I know, are more than willing to conclude those transactions, the contingency being the Forest Society raising the funds. The blocking actions certainly are causing disruption of the project. There have been many other landowners now approached who are not on any direct route that would connect the dots that comprise the line. And several of those landowners who I've spoken to who have been approached by Northern Pass have told them that they're not interested in selling. So I see some activity on Northern Pass trying to find an alternate route, yet I do believe that they will soon announce a route, perhaps with an alternate path, that will be something they will tout as great progress, but there will be no progress that is real because they don't have the properties they need to put the route through. They have a hope that they can acquire those properties or rights to cross perhaps public lands where they have problems. So they're a long way from having a route in northern COAs.
There has been a suggestion that the Northern Pass people think they have something, but they don't really have what they think they have. Is that something that can be discussed at this stage?
I can't speak to what was in their minds when they designed this route and started acquiring properties, other than to say that they obviously miscalculated in some way, shape, or form. They may believe that they've solved those problems, or they may believe that the future holds solutions to those problems. But these are not the kinds of contingencies that if I were an investor, if I was putting money into this project, if I was Hydro-Quebec, I would not be happy with where this project is standing. I would not be happy with the homework that was done in preparation for the project. I would not be happy with the developer in other ways as well.
Thank you. Let's turn to Larry for a moment. Larry, there's been a lot of conversation about the dollars involved in undergrounding power lines. And certainly that's the primary reason Northern Pass is trying so hard to get a route, because they would be paying rent to Public Service Company of New Hampshire that owns that right-of-way, and the dollars are huge. They're up in the $80+ million level. So why do you think that officials in the state of New Hampshire aren't falling over themselves trying to get a piece of this money for perhaps renting an underground right-of-way down interstate highways and railroad right-of-ways?
Well, I think that, first of all, the idea of officials not falling all over themselves is incorrect. We've only had one meeting of the new legislature. That was what we call Organization Day. That was last Wednesday, I believe. And I have to tell you that my bills, I had people literally standing in line to co-sponsor it from both parties. So I've had quite a bit of support from legislators, not so much from the agencies, but from legislators. And legislators make the law.
And so these are bills that you're suggesting would derive income for the state of New Hampshire in some way?
One of them does, yes.
Can you give us a little overview of that bill?
Sure. That bill says that, in essence, that whenever possible, transmission companies have to use state transportation rights of way. I have another bill where we're going to try to determine corridors. And I have another bill which says that all elective projects in the state, transportation projects, all electric transmission projects must be buried. If a project is for system reliability, i.e. it'll keep the lights on, then we're leaving it optional. Can't interfere with people.
Thank you. There were numerous comments during the 361 committee hearings about our state not having a state energy plan. How specifically does New Hampshire go about formulating such a policy, and who would be in charge of formulating that policy?
Well, right now, to my knowledge, there are two bills. One of them is mine. I would form a commission whose job it was to proactively determine a state energy policy. That is a policy which would formulate where power lines are allowed to be, and things like who gets the money from rentals, things like that. My bill gets 2 senators, 3 legislators, 2 people from the power company, 2 representatives from the power companies, and 3 people representing ratepayers. I want them to all work together and present a report at the end of the year, which would go to the governor, the president of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House. There is another bill by Senator Bob Odell. I haven't seen that yet, so I don't know what it says.
But he'd like you to be a co-sponsor of that bill?
Yes, he said so.
Be nice if he'd get a copy of it to you.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Bob, what sort of legal remedies or actions do you think remain available to the opposition to fight the Northern Pass, other than what's already been put into the works?
Well, really, we're at just the beginning stages of setting the scene for legal action that might be contemplated in the future. And much of that legal action will depend on how things develop. We know that in order for the presidential permit process to get out of its neutral gear, it's stalled completely now at the request of the Northern Pass developer. In order for that to occur, they have to announce a route. That route has to have environmental studying done. The DOE has to hold hearings again for scoping purposes in the North Country, and there probably will be at least 2. That's my information. And all of this must precede the development of an environmental impact study. As we know, the new environmental engineers that have been essentially nominated by Northern Pass and okayed by the Department of Energy have been challenged because of the process by which they were selected.
Is that challenge ongoing?
That challenge is ongoing. The Conservation Law Foundation and numerous other organizations in New Hampshire have filed scoping comments with the DOE, And it seems to me that if the current environmental engineering team that has been at least initially approved by DOE, if they aren't replaced, there will likely be a challenge to any determination on the environmental impact study that would be done by one or more of the organizations that has filed their objections with the DOE to the selection process. So that's outstanding. We don't know whether a new environmental team will be picked. So like I say, that sort of thing depends on future events that I can't know. But I would certainly hope that the process by which the environmental consultants for the Department of Energy are picked is not so heavily influenced by the party that has the most at stake in getting environmental permission to put the project through. And that's at the federal level. There are other things at the federal level which will be done undoubtedly. For instance, the new environmental team has been invisible. No one has seen them in the field. No one has seen them doing the environmental studies that are required by the DOE. How long will that take? Or are they just going to copy the work done by the Normando team, which has been disqualified or has been removed from the process because of conflict of interest charges? If they use that data, then isn't that data just as suspect as if we still had the Normando team in place? That will be another issue. I can't say who is going to do what. This has to be carefully assessed. There has to be good faith judgments made based on careful review and research as to what needs to be done. But these are certainly two issues in a very preliminary proceeding. And that's going to take, according to DOE, once they restart the process, I've been told that that is a 2 to 3 year process before it's concluded. So appeals from that process may well be taken.
This is the same NEPA process, yes, that would go along with a special use permit through the National Forest?
That's exactly right. And that was the next point that I wanted to get to, is you do have an application by Northern Pass with the Forest Service for a special use permit for this project. That will have to be amended because the new route that they're looking for traverses more national forests than the original route. There's a segment through, I believe it's in the town of Stark, where they may need to at least update their application. That process will be part of NEPA, and there are all kinds of legal issues with respect to the requirements of the National Forest. And there will be many, many organizations in opposition to this project who file their comments, concerns, and positions with the National Forest Service through the NEPA process. I can't imagine an approval to put this project through the White Mountain National Forest would not go unchallenged by, among others, the Appalachian Mountain Club. Thousands of Appalachian Mountain Club members are now filing comments with the DOE asking that the process be carefully done and that we not give away what took 100 years. 100 years for the people of New Hampshire and the people of the United States. We have millions of visitors that depend on this park being kept in its current state. This transmission line will definitely threaten that. So that's another issue. Then we have the whole state overlay, the SEC, the Site Evaluation Committee. We've talked about that process before. There will be intervention there. There will be challenges, I believe, to the way the SEC really does not examine carefully the basis upon which they're supposed to make determinations. Is this project needed? Is the need so overwhelming that it justifies a 180-mile swath of New Hampshire being clear-cut and used for these monstrous towers and this transmission line for power from Quebec that is controlled by the government of Quebec, on which They need us more than we need that power. There is no demonstrated need right now. And all of those issues should be heard by our SEC. We don't know whether they will or not, but if they don't, that will form the basis of an appeal.
Is it conceivable that this whole process will end up in the New Hampshire Supreme Court at some point?
I would say that between the federal courts and the New Hampshire Supreme Court, I would guess that it would end up potentially in both places. But certainly the New Hampshire Supreme Court is going to have to address legal issues. There will be other issues outside of the SEC process that may have to be heard. For instance, if this transmission line creates a situation where a homeowner is evicted from their home, not because their land is literally taken, but because the transmission line is built in such a way that the home becomes uninhabitable, then that becomes an inverse condemnation. And there will be litigation, I'm sure, by that homeowner, if they decide to pursue it, raising those issues and whether or not it's even lawful in New Hampshire for an inverse condemnation of a property to occur where an elective transmission line, such as Northern Pass, is involved.
Back for a moment to the White Mountain National Forest issue. My understanding of the issuance of a special use permit for a pathway through the forest requires that other alternative routes are examined, offered by the applicant, and then examined, and that the cost of taking an alternative route can't be a factor in determining what route they take. I don't know of any alternative routes that presently exist that have been offered for examination. Do you?
I don't. Initially, with the initial application for the presidential permit, there was an alternative route that skirted the national forest. That was withdrawn by Northern Pass as subsequent to the conclusion of the scoping hearings, and then the Northern Pass's request to stop the presidential permit process. That was 18 months ago or more. And so that alternative route is no longer part of the process. They certainly could refile.
Well, except that the Forest Service says that if they don't come in with an alternative, that the Forest Service will be obligated to develop alternative routes and determine whether they're feasible or not.
I'm not an expert on that, but I do believe I have the same understanding that the Forest Service certainly has the right to explore alternatives on its own as part of the NEPA process, which could include, for instance, use of state highways, undergrounding, and other routes that may be less impactful than the current one.
Larry, let's go back to the 361 commission that was
Wait
formed.
just a second.
Okay.
Before you do, one of the bills that I have in requires, and I have a lot of support for it, requires that the SEC notify the applicant that any proposed route must be accompanied by a fully estimated, cost estimated, alternative route. So they absolutely have to do it.
If your legislation passes.
If my legislation passes, I'm sorry.
Okay. The 361 commission that you were a member of seemed to end at a level of frustration, especially for the legislative members of that commission. I mean, you obviously had some meetings. What sort of went on behind the scenes between the legislators and the various state agencies that were there, and why wasn't everybody on the same at the same sort of point in discussions? What happened?
Well, first of all, nothing went on behind the scenes. Everything was right out in the open.
Okay.
But second of all, and more important, now I can only speak for myself, but I thought we were all on the same page until the final meeting. And I thought that if there were going to be any pushback from the state agencies, it was because their commissioners many of them also serve on the site evaluation committee. So there were a natural hesitance for them to commit to anything which their commissioners would have to stand behind. I understand that, but that's not what they said. And so as to why they were unable to accept suggestions, I don't know. You'll have to ask them.
Well, there was originally, the 361 Commission was supposed to have some members of the public on it. It was supposed to have some citizen involvement, and that changed at some point in time, and the governor got mixed into the process. What was going on there, and why did it end up that these agency heads, whose agency commissioners sit on the SEC, how is it that it evolved to them being on it instead of members of the public?
Well, the bill was written, the bill which established the commission was written by Senator Jeannie Forrester. And we call it an agency, but they're not really an agency, they're an office. There's an Office of Energy and Planning, which belongs to the governor. It's part of the governor's staff. And that was they were there. Why would they not agree? I have no idea, because that's not an agency. They're not on the site evaluation committee. So theoretically, all they do is represent the governor. But the person in charge of all of that legislation would have been Senator Forrester. So anything that happened would be directly, she would have to be the one to answer that. I know that in the House, the bill was presented, it was passed as it was, but it wasn't a House bill, it was a Senate bill.
Well, gentlemen, you must have some comments that you'd like to put on the table for our listeners and viewers that you feel is important, maybe especially at this time of the year. What words would each of you like to offer for consumption by the viewers?
Well, I think my legislation is not aimed at any one specific project. It's aimed at energy policy throughout the state of New Hampshire. But I don't think it's right. I'm not an attorney. Bob's the attorney here. But I don't think it's right or fair that an elective project, which is designed to make money for the company which sponsors it, should impact the rights of individual property owners. I think, to me, without knowing anything, that's theft by unauthorized taking. If a power line were to go through here and not go onto Bob's property, but he could see it, his property would be worth less.
Or worthless.
Or worthless completely. But it certainly would be worth less.
Yes.
And I argue that the assessment done by the assessor hired by Mr. Dennis was valid. I'm sorry, but if you don't think that power lines affect the value of a property, I got a bridge to sell you.
I can certainly speak to that, as you're well aware.
I know you can. So I think that the New Hampshire uses, on average, about 1,250 megawatts. And highest
day, per day.
Yeah, and our highest ever was, I think, 2,500, but the production capacity of New Hampshire is 4,000. So, in fact, it's probably more now because of the
wind projects.
The wind projects and the gas, the inexpensive gas. So I think there, and in our grid, which is where Hydro-Quebec proposes to sell, or others, it's around 27,000. And the production capacity is around 29,000. So ISO New England, which stands for the Independent System Operator, has determined that this project is purely elective. I don't think an elective project should impact homeowners or residents.
In layman's terms, an elective project is one that's not needed to keep the lights on.
That's right.
All right. Bob, what can you tell us at this time of the year, Christmas time? You got a gift for us?
Well, I do. I want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holiday. We're not going to let the overlay of this project interfere with the enjoyment of family, friends, community, and environment. We live up here because we love living here. This project is, in my view, if we put it in perspective, just another threat that has to be stopped. 18 months ago, we were in the midst of a fast track to a DOE process that has totally been stalled by the efforts of grassroots organizations in New Hampshire who have risen up, studied the issues as best they can, sought the help of their elected representatives, made their views known, and given this project significant trouble. For a while, they called us a nuisance. Then they called us special interests. They still think that the gas industry is financing the local opposition. I mean, I laugh at that daily. I wish someone was financing the opposition, but unfortunately, we are who we are, and we are limited to our own resources. Yes. But that says something. When the people stand up and object, when the people want to be heard, it says something. This fight has just begun if they continue. Hydro-Quebec needs to understand that. They're the elephant in the room. Once they get engaged, they're going to meet very friendly folks in Concord who will be interested in discussing with them the implementation of their grand scheme to keep lights on in New England, even though we don't need their power. But until they realize that Northeast Utilities has its own special interests in keeping this project in an arena where the public is going to oppose it, until they realize that it's the wrong horse to ride, they're not going to get what they want. So my advice to everyone out there this year is have a very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Do not let these guys get you down. Northern Pass is a project that Northeast Utilities would love to deliver to its investors, and those investors and those executives at Northeast Utilities don't live here. They don't understand who they're messing with.
Well, there you have it, folks. Straight from the Baker residence up here in Columbia. If we were any further north, we'd be in Santa Claus Village. So I join with Bob and with Larry in wishing all of you a Merry Christmas, and let's make 2013 a happy year by defeating the Northern Pass project once and for all. Thank you very much for being with us.